Welcome, everyone. My name is Dan Hickman. Forgive me, I am solo tonight. I am without my other half of the show, Kayvon Azami, who is under the weather. So you're just getting a big dose of me tonight, but I am going to be reading off all of his picks for you. Thanks for tuning in, everyone in the YouTube chat. Appreciate you all tuning in and having you tonight. So thanks for bearing with me by myself and listening to me, first of all. I'm just going to go ahead and do what we always do here. If you're new to the show, make sure you hit that like and that subscription button below here on YouTube. That way you can check out future shows of us. Next week we should both be back. And that way you know what's going on. You can always easily find us again. Hopefully you'll do that. Everyone that's been around this season, we really appreciate you tuning in week after week. I know I speak for Kayvon on all this. So yeah, I just want to jump right into things like we normally do. We'll look real quick at last week, the week that was. Not such a great week for me, honestly. So without any further ado, I'll just let you take a peek at that. You can see last week my show card was pretty abysmal, as bad as it gets, 0-3. And, it comes with the territory with 3 picks in a week. Sometimes it's going to happen. Last season, it didn't happen to me a single time. This season, this is the second time I want to say. So, yeah, not the best season so far, but cumulative record for both of us on all of our personal cards is looking really good. So I'm not going to get into these games too much. UTEP was a huge disappointment. So is Arizona State. How a team can't cover against a team like CU is in any environment, I don't care what it is just beyond me. And Marshall was also a big letdown. With Kayvon, I really liked his plays too. I think K-State was a really sharp play. Iowa State, I don't think I agreed with as much on, but I understood the logic behind it. Wake Forest made a ton of sense, and that was pretty unfathomable how they got blown out at Louisville, and that's a game I want to review again. Just watch the condensed highlights of it. I think, it's going to be a good thing to do, and I see we got some comments. Kayvon's in the house in the chat, so if anyone has a question, you can talk to him and myself there too. So we welcome that always. We love feedback. We love the ranting. Like if you got a bad beat story, we love to hear that. If you got like a crazy thriller ride of a weekend, we love hearing about that stuff. Other takes, you get sharper and better at this by hearing the takes of other people and digesting everything. So just wanted to touch on that. And I guess without any further ado, before I jump into the picks, I do want to mention this is a pretty subtly big week in college football as a whole. We've got, Tennessee got that number 1 ranking. You've noticed if you've been following college football this week, Tennessee has taken over number 1 in the country, which is really exciting because we're all used to seeing Bama up there. And also Clemson got up into the 4th spot from, representing the ACC rather well. So that's exciting too. And so that's going to kind of come into play throughout these bets too. But, this week, the Tennessee at Georgia game is going to be must-see TV. If you're not watching that, I question how much you love college football. So without any further ado, I will just jump right into my first pick and make my screen a little bigger. See if we got a comment here in the chat. How mad I was that TCU was ranked 7th. Don't get me started. I'm a Horned Frog truther. I love that team just purely as a fan of the sport. As a bettor, I love them too. They've treated me well, of course. And they're just fun to watch. I love high-flying offense. Who doesn't? I'm no different than many people in that regard. Yeah, it's upsetting, but at the same time, TCU's got to run the table. And they got to stay motivated to crush everybody in their way if they want to make an impression and hope Clemson basically hiccups here. So, yeah, I just want to touch on that. Thanks, Kayvon. And just want to give a shout out to my wife and everyone and my family and all my friends that are watching right now. Anyone new watching, just thank you so much for tuning in. And I'll jump right into it. So, I love those bleeding eye red frogs. Yeah, I'm definitely guilty of posting some tweets out there. If you do follow me, it's down here I'm pointing the wrong way, but at DanH720 on Twitter, you can follow me there. I will sometimes post a funny GIF, but most importantly, if you were following me, you would have known that I don't know how it's looking right now. There's a game going on right now as I speak. I actually went against UTEP, one of my favorite teams, and took Rice. Maybe someone in the chat can tell me how that game's going right now. I took Rice -3.5. So if you're watching that right now, you might find a live betting angle. And we were talking before the show, it's something we might do in the future is do a live bet cast where we watch a game live or the second half, pick it up at the end of the first half when that's a good time to like look at a live bet and kind of talk about some live betting angles too. Maybe next season we'll do that. We'll see, but something we're thinking about. Nevertheless, I'm going to go ahead and jump right into my first bet of the week. So I love this play. I regret not doing it last year because this play has hit 4 of the last 5 seasons these two teams have played. And that is the under total in Air Force versus Army. This is a service academy versus a service academy, which means you can expect a shitload of running the football on both sides. You can expect a slower paced game. So right there is 2 key things to look at when you're trying to look at, at a total and thinking about taking the under. Also, it's at a neutral site. I actually watched this game last year, and I remember being like, I'm not an Air Force homer or anything, but I live near there. So I was like kind of watching it and just like, wow, what a disappointing performance on their part. And this year, again, I kind of feel like Army could steal the game. And they're a severe underdog. They're like plus 200 or more right now. So if you're thinking about putting that together in like, a multi-leg parlay or doing something crazy, that would be a candidate to do it. Although I don't recommend doing that normally or making a habit of it, because that is how the books make their money. So anyways, I always have nuggets like that for people that are newer to betting, just some common pitfalls. You can always DM me on Twitter if you got a question about that. Some things that I made mistake when I first started and learned from, or just never fell into because I had people around me that were helping me out make better decisions. So that's what we're here to do every week. This game is just, there's not really much to say about it. Let me scroll up. My thing keeps messing up here. I pretty much hammered it already. Just 2-run games that, this is kind of a system play, which I'm normally like don't like pure system plays, but this is definitely a good one. Like, you can like try to poke holes in it and say like things like, Army's done this, like they put up a bunch of points last week. Yeah, but look who that was against. Look at some of the opponents. Against other service academies, tell me how they're scoring a lot of points. It's just not happening. Just the flow of the game lends itself to the under here. If anyone wants to argue that in the chat, feel free. Locks for the week. So I don't like lock because it's a 4-letter word. Connor, thanks for the comment. We're going to get into that at the end. The closest thing we have to a mortal lock or a lock of any kind is like basically going to be like our best bets of the week or any of our 3 plays here, because both of us will have like a full betting card ourselves, like 10 to 15 units, probably ballpark. And we're literally picking our 3 favorite out of our betting card. So you can always reach out to us and ask us like, hey, what are some other spots you like? Or what do you think about this game, that game? Just want to answer your question real quick there. Hopefully I did. So yeah, this under has hit at like, I want to say over 80% over the last 20 years that that service academies have met in this game. The Commander-in-Chief Trophy is what it's called. Again, that's in Arlington, Texas, so it's a neutral site game. I always joke the Air Force should be called the ground force when it comes to football, because they are not known for throwing the ball. They will pound it and run the rock relentlessly until they break a big run. They do it with their quarterbacks and their running backs, and they will lull a team to sleep and then try to run that play action and throw a bomb. So that's kind of like their whole offensive strategy, and I've watched it a million times. So yeah, this is just a really, really good spot. The under in service academy games is a tradition like no other in sports and sports betting. So I would jump on it sooner than later. This line is definitely going to move down because the public and sharps everyone's going to hammer that under to some point, and then maybe sharp money will come back on the over later. So definitely get it in now if you want that under, because it will move. All right. So that's my first pick. And on deck here, we've got Kayvon's first play. All right. And so I'm pretty much just going to read this one straight up for you guys, straight from the man himself, Kayvon Azami. Shout out to my co-host who's under the weather, by the way, and just want him to recover swiftly and feel good as soon as possible. Look forward to having you back, brother. And we got he has Memphis plus 3.5 hosting UCF. Wow. My first impression is it's a ballsy play, but let's see what he says here. Quoting, 3 consecutive defeats have dropped Memphis Tigers to 4-4 on the season, but that record's a bit misleading. They lost one of the most improbable games of the season against Houston after leading by 3 scores late in the game. Wow. They followed that up by blowing another 3-score lead at ECU in quadruple overtime. Oh, yeah, that was a crazy game. Their next game at Tulane, which is a really good team, by the way, in an awful spot after those 2 collapses. Yep. Due to some special teams blunders and early turnovers, Memphis found itself down 35-0 at the half at Tulane before coming back to fall short and lose by just 10 points after, a pretty good comeback attempt there. This well-timed last week bye week for Memphis kind of allows them to reset and get ready into the final third of the season here, which is where we're at. This is week 10. Here we are. Crazy, huh? Season's flown by for me. I don't know about you guys out there. It always does. But, yeah, matchup-wise, Memphis is really good at defending the run, which you really need that against UCF. I fully agree with this point, Kayvon. The Memphis Tigers also really prefer to sling the ball. I think they play with a pretty good pace. I've watched them a little bit. That's really the only way to attack this UCF Knights team. They have a pretty stout run defense. So it's like a good running attack, a pretty good run defense. And then, if you need to go in the air against UCF pretty much, unless you have an absolutely elite running game, which Memphis does not have. Now, this is the big point that he made here at the final point of this bet. Again, this is Memphis plus 3.5. Keep in mind, UCF quarterback John Reese Plumlee is a key to their offense because he can run it. He does the RPOs a lot. He'll just they have design keepers for him. I've watched them play a lot too. He's actually going to be questionable in this game. So you may want to monitor this one. Kayvon might have a bit of a sharper take than me on this in terms of if you should wait on it for that news or just get it in now. I'm not sure. But yeah, he's saying in the chat here, it's the sell high, buy low factor. He's right about this. UCF is on an extreme high after beating Cincinnati last week. That's probably as high as their stock's going to get. I saw him crack into the top 25, I think, if I remember right, too. And that is a big deal for most teams. Hey, welcome, Ian Lights Out, to the room as well. Thanks for hanging with me, everybody. It really makes the show go a lot easier by myself. So the backup for UCF is going to be Mikey Keene. He's got some prior starting experience, but, I agree with – I don't know about a slight downgrade. He might be slight to semi-significant downgrade, in my opinion. Kayvon says a slight downgrade. Either way, I think there's going to be a little drop-off if Plumlee doesn't get the start here for UCF. And so to take that plus 3.5, the plus 3.5 points on Memphis would be the play here for me too. I totally agree with that. So no rebuttal for me. Let me catch my breath for a sec and get a sip of water, and we'll be here for a minute. We'll go right into the next pick in a sec. It's going to be the second pick for me. I'm going to go, lo and behold, there's 2 bets on my personal card this week in the SEC, and this is one that's on the show coming up here. And that is none other than a team I was not very high on coming into the season or the direction their program's going unless they get sort of a miracle ceiling coaching hire this next sometime. They just fired their coach last week. That's been a theme all season for across college football. You look at Wisconsin did the same thing, and they just ripped Purdue apart. And Wisconsin's not been a good team this year. Let's talk about even shittier teams this season. Let's go down to the lowest of the low, pretty much. CU, Colorado, and what was the other one? There's two really bad teams. CU is one of them. They fired their Georgia Tech, also a really bad team in the ACC. They fired their coach, and the very next week came out with really kind of improbable wins. And this has been a thing going all season. And I would say this spot for Auburn is way less. I don't know about way less, but fairly improbable. Not as improbable as like CU winning their game that they won. So that's one thing I wanted to touch on. Auburn plus 12.5 is the play here for me. I was looking at this one today, and I already took it for a unit. I would like to see a 13 or a 14. It's debatable if you can hang and wait and get that or not, as I've seen it just kind of bubbling between like 13 and 12.5 all week. And I'm cool with 12.5, but if you want to wait for 13, I wouldn't fault you there. They're getting 74% of all the bets, so public and sharps alike, 96% of the money. That's pretty undeniable. It opened at 10.5, so there was maybe some early money on Mississippi State. But let's talk about them a little bit. We talked about this narrative of the coach being fired. Next thing is going to just be, let's see, Mike Leach, Mississippi State coach. Not sorry guys, I'm going between my tickers and your comments. I'll get to them. Mike Leach is not he's a great coach. He's a great offensive mind. He's like, he runs the air raid offense. He's done it at Texas Tech. He's doing it at Mississippi State right now. But he's not very good all time against covering the spread. Like his record ATS is pretty bad. And especially when his teams are coming off the bye week, they haven't put up that many points. That's the strength of this Mississippi State team is their offense, but he's got the bad track record, getting his teams like in shape for a big game off a bye. So that's really worth noting here in this spot. Another thing, I'll go over some of the analytics here too, just in basic stuff I was looking at. Mississippi State is 81st in the country in yards per rush attempt. And Auburn is 59th. The Mississippi State offense this is shocking to me. Like you always think that they're like a really, really good offense, like especially throwing the football. But they actually sit 91st in the country in yards and attempt per passing. And the reason behind that is because they love to dink and dunk, which if you've never heard that term before, if you're newer to betting in college football, it's like a lot of short passes to like running backs, tight ends, wide receivers out of the slant they run a lot of short routes is what I'm trying to say. They're not like some of the teams we're going to talk we're going to talk about at the end of the show, or I'm going to talk about at the end of the show that like to air it out. So every once in a while they will, but they're not known for like many like a lot of yards per attempt. Mississippi State. So Auburn is going to love that because the Auburn defense is built better for stopping an air attack, passing game, whatever you want to call it. They're not so hot at stopping the run. And teams have been gashing them with the run game, and that's how teams have been beating up on Auburn. The question here is kind of is Leach for Mississippi State, is he going to abandon the air attack enough to be effective to win the game, other than if they just get a big lead or something unexpectedly, which I don't think they're going to build a huge lead here. I think this is a game we could get a backdoor cover because Auburn is going to give them a heavy dose of running the football, and they've got an interim coach. No telling what they're going to do. Mississippi State doesn't really have any film on what this coach does, which gives Auburn a little bit of a unknown advantage, in my opinion. On top of that, if they control the clock with running it, They can make this a coin flip of a game and give me, when you're talking about a coin flip of a game and there's a team that's a 2 touchdown dog, give me that underdog, even though they're on the road here. So Auburn plus 12.5 it is. All right. CU is the worst. They're near the bottom of college football right now. Nowhere to go but up for them. They've got great program history. Anyone in Colorado, I'm not trying to just knock them. But anyways, let's look at Kayvon's second pick here. And that's what's great about the show. That I'll touch on it. Is I saw some sharp money coming in on the other side of this game earlier in the week, and I was like, is that fool's gold or is that legitimate? And after reading Kayvon's write-up here, I'm very sold on Clemson minus 3.5, which is our next bet of the week. At Notre Dame, tough place to go in and win. Sure, historically it is, but let's jump right into this one. One sec. All right. Here's Kayvon's write-up for this one. Again, the bet here is Clemson minus 3.5 at Notre Dame. I don't know what we like it to. I wouldn't mind this up to like 6.5 for sure. Even if they have a little of an off game, I see Clemson winning by at least a touchdown here personally. Notre Dame's got a lot of credit, and he's right, for beating Syracuse. But the Orange were badly banged up, and I don't want to say they were a fraud. They weren't, but they kind of were beneficial of some other teams like injuries, and then they had that tough loss at Clemson. They kind of got banged up. They lost their quarterback early in that game last week, and Notre Dame faced a backup who had thrown just 5 passes all season. This week, Notre Dame is going to face a rested and very talented Clemson team playing for a possible playoff position. Notice they're the 4th team. They can't just lose and keep that 4th spot. You guys know how that works in college football. You lose one, you're pretty much screwed unless you have one of the strongest schedules in the country. Like some of the SEC schools are probably the only ones that can do that or get away with that, and they know it. And the teams that aren't there know it too. The Tiger defense is going to be facing a very one-dimensional Notre Dame offense with one of the worst passing games in college football. Quarterback Drew Pine has only completed 48.6% of his passes all season. The last 3 games, that's just the last 3 games. While averaging 6.3 yards per pass, which is pretty meh. You can't run on Clemson either. They have the 7th stingiest 91.1 yards allowed in rushing total per game. As far as their offense is concerned, Clemson has scored on 38 of 39 trips in the red zone. That's pretty impeccable. And they're going to face an awful Notre Dame red zone defense as well. The Irish have already lost to Marshall at home. And Marshall is a team I was high on before the season started. A team I took the over on their team total wins, and a team that I'm extremely disappointed in this season, especially after last week. Don't get me started on the Herd. And so Notre Dame lost to them at home, and also Stanford, who's also not very good in my opinion. They lost to both of those teams at home. Clemson's a much better team than both of those teams. You could make an all-star team out of those 2 teams, and Clemson still be heads and shoulders better than they are. So, I like this a lot. Excuse me. Definitely laying the 3.5 points with Clemson on Saturday night is what Kayvon's saying, and frankly, I'm with him. I'm going to probably lock this in when I get done here. Clemson's been good to me this week, even though I'm an NC State fan at heart. With betting, I don't care about that. Clemson's just they're just a really good team, and I think they definitely have to win this game to get into the football playoff. So this is from a narrative standpoint, this is a huge game for them. Every game here One mistake and they're out of the playoff, probably, like any ACC school or Pac-12 school. So important. So this actually turned me in the other direction. I started leaning Notre Dame earlier in the week, but Kayvon steered me right here, and thanks for that, brother. Appreciate you. All right, so we're already through our first two bets here. Hopefully it's well said. I appreciate you, man, because it's cool talking to you this way too. But this was you made some great points here, and that line's just crooked. Like, it's disrespectful to Clemson, in my opinion. Like, they should be able to go into Notre Dame Stadium and just quiet the place and beat them by 10 or more points, in my opinion. I'm going to check the power rankings when we get off here, man. I'll text you about that. And maybe I'll post it on Twitter too. Just remind me, because power rankings I use, I think, have them way – there's a bigger gap than 3.5 points. All right. Yeah, definitely. And that's a great point, Kayvon. It could be 4 by kickoff easily. I mean, I would still take that number, but 3.5 to 4, I mean, 4 is a common margin that teams win by. It's not the most common. The most common is 7, I think. So you start thinking about the math and the multiples of the scoring. If you kick field goals, touchdowns, extra points, 3, 1, and 6, respectively. I might have got that a little off, but you know what I mean. So it's good to think about that when you're looking at spreads on teams. I used to never think about that when I started doing this, so don't make that mistake. All right, and I guess we're going to reload for a second here, and we're going to get to our best bets. I don't see any questions in the chat about any other games, so it's not too late to ask or anything, but I'm going to jump right into our best bets of the week here in a second. All right. And if someone could tell me how the UTEP Rice game's going, again, I got Rice -3.5. Kind of breaks my heart because I love UTEP. No lie. But Rice should handle them pretty easily, I would think. I was like tied at the half or something, like 17-17. All right. So here we go. Best bet of the week. For me, this was my very first bet of the week this week. I locked this in like right away, pretty much, I think on Monday or something. And I didn't really get a better number than what I'm seeing right now, which is pretty crazy to me. But I fully expect this number to get into the 70s. Ooh. And that is going to be none other than the TCU Texas over 69. This is a game I think is easily going to get into the 70s. I wouldn't be shocked if this game gets into the freaking 80s. Recipes for an over. Insanely fast-paced offenses on both sides, meaning they're not waiting, milking that play clock down to like single digits ever. They're snapping the ball as quick as they can. It's a sprint, not a marathon for these guys, for both teams' offenses. We saw Texas Tech and Carter Finley earlier this season. As a State fan, I was impressed with how quickly these guys move on and off the field. You can tell they got the conditioning, and they fully take advantage of teams that are not as well conditioned as they are. Boy, oh boy, TCU takes that to the extreme. I don't think there's a better team in all the land of college football at playing like a fast-paced offense and just burning teams and just taking the will out of the defense than TCU, which is one reason I just love watching them and love them as a team, as a fan of college football. And then especially as a bettor, because they're doing crooked stuff that the books can't always keep up with, like their team totals, like game totals. Sometimes you can look at the quarters, and like if you have a total that's not 1/4 of the game total, like you can look at some things, break it up, divide it by the quarters, and if it doesn't make sense, you can take advantage of that too and go over like first quarter with them. They create teams like this create so many angles against the sports book, and that's another reason I like them a lot. So just real talk right there. So yeah, my bet here, my best bet of the week is none other. It's TCU Texas Tech over 69 points. One sec. I'm coming back to you, chat. Yep, the Frogs, the Horned Frogs, the purple. I might have to get a shirt if they win me much more money this season. I was going to do it with UTEP last week, but they failed me, sadly. So I haven't bought a shirt yet this year, but maybe I will. One of these teams hopefully will do it. The other thing I like about this matchup, I mean, obviously Duggan's like, I don't know if he's still number one in quarterback rating in the country for TCU, but he's an unreal quarterback. If you just watch him play, his accuracy, the throws he makes, like, it's incredible. He throws right into double coverage without blinking an eye. The guy just has ice in his veins. Like, I think he's sick, man. He's incredible. And then for Texas Tech, rather, they've got 3 capable quarterbacks. I don't really care who starts here, who does what. They're going to mix them around a lot, I think, like they've been doing. Something that's really crazy is I was talking about that pace. Well, you're talking about time between plays. Like Texas Tech, I think, leads the country in that stat, or they're up there. It's like 20 seconds between each play. So they're just snapping the ball at will. They go so fast. It's fun to watch. This game might be the most plays in a game all season in all of college football. It really could be. It's going to be an absolute barn burner. Yep, and Texas Tech is. Let's look at some other metrics here. They're 51st out of 130 teams in points per game. So they're averaging 29.7 points per game, which tells me they're getting 30 points a game. Texas Tech is on average, okay? TCU in that same category is 5th at 42.1 points per game, okay? I'm going to lead into something else. I'm going to circle back to that point and lead into something else for Kayvon's best bet afterwards. Let's talk about a few other things. TCU is 3rd in the country in total offense. Texas Tech is not too shabby either, 35th. And even if they have a slow start, they can turn it on late. And I've seen them do that on the road. They're not intimidated in like any road environment. I mean, I've seen them do really good things at a couple of other stadiums this season. So this game is at TCU too, and I don't think it matters too much. As long as we don't have like crazy wind, we're going to be even if like we're going to be fine here. But hopefully not. The wind can have a negative impact on an over total if it's sustained at 15 miles an hour or more. The history says so. Both teams are also giving up an absurd. Let's see. TCU gives up when teams get into the red zone against TCU. They give up points 86% of the time. So the defensive finishing drives is really bad on both teams defensively, meaning when other teams get past, say, the 40-yard line of TCU or the 40-yard line of Texas Tech, they're going to at least come away with the field goal. I didn't get a comparative on touchdowns, but I mean 96% against TCU, someone's scoring at least a field goal or a touchdown. It's 86% again for 96% for Texas Tech, 86% for TCU. And I look at those numbers in these matchups and like every week, and those are some of the highest I've seen, like all season long from any team. And that's that's an issue for both these teams. So like everything you can think of lends itself to the over here. Basically nothing lends itself to the under. This is the easiest. It's a high number. Games don't get into the 70s often, but games like this do. So this is my best bet of the week. I would recommend jumping in if you like that play as soon as possible, because actually this number could go up. The betting public loves to hammer overs, like Kayvon has talked about before, and that's so true. Like people like to see points. They want to, they want to bet these kind of games and get the over. So I would lock it in sooner than later and get a better number than all those people. Good idea. Just to give yourself all the cushion you can. It's important. When you look at putting in a bunch of bets over time, all those little numbers, when you get that value, it really adds up. Makes a difference between winning and losing for a lot of bettors out there. So keep that in mind. And again, let's circle back to the fact that TCU is averaging 42.1 points per game. Okay. 42.1 points per game. That's an average for them. So you're talking they're averaging 6 touchdowns a game. Do quick math there. That's going to lead me right in to Kayvon's best bet of the week. And I saw this discrepancy earlier in the week and looked at it today. Kind of wish I had done it sooner, but I jumped in, and this is going to be Kayvon's best bet of the week, everybody. And I locked this in myself before the show. Over 38.5. I saw DraftKings has it minus 120. But if you have Bet Rivers in your state, which I do here, minus 113 is what I got it for, which is a little better. I don't mind the minus 120, but if you can get better, always shop your bets. Always shop your bets. More books, the better. You're shopping multiple markets, and you're taking the best number every time that you can find. That's the way to go. Brand loyalty doesn't serve anyone well in the world of sports betting. I will tell you that. So anyways, this is his play of the week. Kayvon's best bet, TCU team total over 38.5. Texas Tech is going to have no answer for this offense. Plain and simple. He sent this to me all in caps, all in bold letters for you guys. All right. So he's serious, and so am I. I couldn't agree more. Texas Tech's defense is pretty pathetic. I didn't check out the metrics on that before the show because I knew this already too. We've been doing this all season. So again, I'll just do a quick recap of all the bets tonight. If anyone's got a question, let me know in the chat before I head out. And here we go. I'm going to show these. So I had Army and Air Force under 40.5. I had Auburn plus 12 at Mississippi State. I had the TCU Texas Tech over 69 total. Kayvon had Memphis plus 3.5 against UCF. Clemson minus 3.5 at Notre Dame. And his best bet, TCU team total over 38.5. I will close on one other final point. I don't like single game parlays. They're bad news for bettors, good news for the books. But if I was thinking about one here from our show, you could actually potentially lump those two together. I don't know what it's going to look like. If I end up doing it, I'll post a tweet about it later. But as always, thank you everyone for tuning in. I see 9 of you here. Appreciate you all. If you got questions, you're welcome to DM myself on Twitter at DanH720 or at Kayvon_sports, I believe is Kayvon's Twitter. He can probably put that in the chat. And best of luck this week. Thanks again. Don't forget to like and hit the subscribe button on YouTube, and also that little the little bell icon. That will send you notifications when we're going live, so you don't miss a show ever if you don't want to miss a show ever, bottom line. And best of luck this week, everybody. Till next week, see ya.